This is the Grow to Amazing podcast, episode number 2. This is Tony Mays, your host, and just welcome to the podcast. The podcast here, we're just a regular dude. I'm just working every day to grow, to learn from the mistakes I make, to find new ways to grow in the world, and so that's why I've kind of started this podcast. And very happy to have my first guest on today to kind of catch up on some of my history, some of our shared history, and kind of dig into where he's gone with his life and some of the mistakes he's made and some of the journeys that he's had. And I think you're going to really like this one because it digs down into a new book that he's got out. So I wanted to introduce John. John Luthens is a good friend of mine from high school. Unfortunately, we kind of lost touch a little bit over the years, but thanks to the goodness of social media, we were able to reconnect and kind of get back in touch with each other. So John and I go way back to, I think we didn't really get to know each other till high school. But John, why don't you kind of do a little intro of yourself if you want to, and then we'll kind of start to dig into things from there, because that gets us pretty much right into the book then, I think. So.
Yeah, I'm John Luthens. Grew up just a hop, skip, and a jump down Highway 8 from Tony. I guess we probably didn't connect till, I suppose I was a junior, senior in high school.
Somewhere around there, yeah.
Have some heated tennis matches under the burning sun, and
I helped you re-roof your house once. I remember that. So
yeah, played a little video games together, some cross-country skiing, of course, cross-country running. Maybe that's how we hooked up. Tony's been a runner. I don't know if you still run later in life, but it kind of looks like you're in shape, so you must do something.
Working on it, working on it.
But that's how we really met, and I guess we were roommates. For 1 year in college together, also.
Yep, my freshman year, your sophomore year, and yep.
Back in the old crazy days.
Yeah, so let me read a little bit from the Legend in the Highway 8 Woods. So what I'm reading from is John's book, just to kind of introduce probably your childhood a little bit. Maybe then you can comment on it and kind of expand on that. But his book is called Writing Wild: Tales and Trails of a Wisconsin Outdoor Journalist, and you can get that on Amazon. And you can get it from, what was your the publisher as well, direct with signature?
Probably www.cablepublishing.com is the best way. Then you get signed copies if you choose.
Sure.
So
that's
Amazon,
where I got mine from. So
yep.
So if you're looking for, but it's a collection of short stories of John's travels over the years and different experiences he's had, and the first section is about growing up around Barron County, Wisconsin, northwestern Wisconsin. We both grew up about a mile from each other, and one thing I noticed from here was just kind of the difference in our experience, I guess, and just being a mile apart from each other. So Highway 8 was a dividing line, slicing through the land and splitting the tree-shrouded fog in the northern tier of Wisconsin from the rest of the state like a knife culling dark crust from a loaf of bread. Times have moved on, and this cut and dried orientation of Wisconsin may not necessarily be the case today. Being perfectly honest, it probably wasn't even the case back then, but when I was growing up, the blacktop meridian of Highway 8 was imaginatively presumed to separate the bulk of the civilized map from the uncharted wilds, and this geographical fault line was routinely drawn into my head by local elders and coffee shop quarterbacks who fancied themselves forgotten frontiersmen on the cusp of the Great Divide. Now, I'll skip down a little bit. I'm definitely not going to read all of this book. I'm going to skip probably some sections.
I think just to hire you to do the audio books, maybe.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah, I'd be happy to. So, but Highway 8 was a blade of division. Indeed, my brother and I, who's your brother Dan, crossed through the ranks of maturity along one of the most storied sections, sprouting our wings along a stretch of oak and aspen forest that swung through Barron County. I'm still not certain to this day who owned the woods on either side, but in the Wild West language of our youth, it didn't matter one way or another. Private property was an unfathomed bit of grammar that had no place in our Highway 8 vocabulary. So I take it you and Dan roamed a bit around the woods as you were growing up.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically where we got our love of nature, I suppose. We grew up on the south side of the highway till you probably didn't know us back then.
No, I didn't.
By the time we moved into the new house, so we got to explore the woods on both sides. I guess it was a little analogy, north versus south, rich versus poor. I guess I've never really made it rich yet, but
Yeah, turkey farm versus wilds of or wild woods a little bit more. So
it's Barron, Barron, the turkey
yeah,
farm. It played a big thing. But we've made forts, plenty of games, running around, chasing each other in the woods, camping out, um, making little fires, try not to burn anything down.
hmm
But when we moved into our new house on the north side, I believe that's when we really started going a little bit wild in there.
yeah, yep. And I've got a little bit of that highlight I want to go through too, because older and debatably wiser when we made our move into our new house on the north side of Highway 8. We found ourselves in our true element before our feet hit the opposite side of the asphalt. Maybe we lusted for bigger adventure or deeper philosophical meaning in the chaos, or maybe we'd ravaged our fort on the south side for so much boat material that it had become structurally unlivable. It's even a distinct possibility that the turkey farmer had phoned our folks to say, fun is fun, and it's nice to see him playing in the woods, but tell your damn kids to quit chasing my flock into feathery splinters. So, whatever the circumstances, it was the wilds of the north that we defined ourselves as true connoisseurs of the outdoor game, and it was on the north side that we really began carving our legends into the Highway 8 woods. So you had everything, 100 yards back was thornapple, poison sumac heaven. The overgrowth spilled into a clearing that grew thick with blackberry bushes and hid an ancient windmill, which creaked in the wind and mixed with rustling of aspens. It had the aura of a forgotten age. No barns or cobbled farmhouse foundations, and no real sign that some hardy settler had once homesteaded, just clawed fingers of thorns and ominous blades that never quit creaking. So, you know, you did you gradually just kind of start to discover your way around there and too much time on your
We
hands?
explored here and there, and later on in life, as I grew into being a writer,
Yeah.
um, you didn't know it back then. Of course,
Yep.
didn't
Yep.
know it back then what you really had.
Mhm.
Growing up as a youngster, this was our world, and you thought it could never stop.
Mhm.
It could never stop. It definitely gave me a background as an outdoorsman and as a writer, growing up somewhere like that.
Mhm.
We lived close enough that I don't know if you had the same experiences, but probably not.
Well, mine was different. I'll probably talk. I'm sure I'll dig into some of my history on other podcast episodes too. But we didn't. The railroad tracks for us felt more like a line that I wasn't supposed to cross for some reason. So, I was probably I don't know. I just didn't think I just didn't think it was somewhere to explore over those railroad tracks. So, we didn't. I don't know. That's why I was one of the big
We used
experience
them.
differences between us was,
Yeah, we
I
used
didn't.
it as we could take those tracks all the way into Barron.
Yep. Yep.
There's blackberries, raspberries, and um, cliffs, little islands
Yeah.
that we built up. The railroad tracks were a dividing line, north and south also, as much as Highway 8 was.
Yep. Yep. And you said in here, there's sandstone cliffs for climbing, rising along the Underground Railroad you had christened, kind of that railroad line going through there, rumored to be honeycombed with caverns that had long ago been sealed shut for the safety of wandering children. Screw that. We left our childish behavior hanging out to dry on the south side of Highway 8. We spent days digging to unearth the entrances. Damned if hidden caves weren't ripe for holding treasure. We would have gladly blasted the sandstone cliffs to pieces if we'd known how to lay our grubby hands on some Barron County black market explosives. Fingers rubbed raw, countless sets of clothes torn to shreds, working like rabid badgers for untold seasons, but no caves were ever found. But then you also found an island. Our island lay due north of Highway 8 and in the starboard center of a cow pasture creek.
And I don't even remember what the name of that was. It Quarters Creek? I don't even know what the name of the creek was, but it was
Yeah, I'm not even
just
sure either. So
green, the green, grossest looking
marshy.
water you ever. Well, boy, we were in there though. I mean, made a little bridge, and again, this all background for later in life.
Well,
You
and
just
this was
don't
kind
know
of
what
that
you
day and
got
age
till it's
too.
gone.
Yeah, this is kind of that day and age too, where your parents kind of kicked you out of the house at 8 o'clock in the morning and said, come back when it's dark out or when I yell for you for dinner time, right? I mean,
I guess you could say what a simpler time maybe, but maybe
yeah,
not. We just grew up in a different time.
yep, yep,
Now multimedia, we've got our game complex complex over there, TVs. So everything is different. But back then,
yeah,
what did we have? We didn't know any different. There we
hmm
were, all day, every day,
Do,
building, running.
do you think your parents really encouraged that kind of exploration, or did you guys just do it?
I would say my mom and dad definitely had a big role in fostering our out of doors experience. We were never pressured to, well, you've got to, well, we had to work around the house, but we'd always complain about it.
Yeah, there's a nice story in here about you guys shoveling snow in the driveway as well. So, and complaining about who was the loser that had to shovel. So,
Yes, I was pretty lucky to have the parents I did because they
mhm,
knew, maybe they knew something that I didn't know or my brother didn't know.
yep,
But they knew
yep,
that this was, you only go through childhood once, and
hmm
this wasn't a bad way to go through childhood.
yep.
Um,
So what was your? I mean, you guys were big with going up north to Brule and things like that as well, right? I mean, was that where kind of your dad grew up, or was that just his place to go to?
my mom was actually, she grew up there,
Oh, she did. Okay.
around Northwestern,
hmm
right outside the town of Brule. My grandparents had a cabin up there from as early as I can remember, and we'd spend summers there. My dad was a teacher, so we had our
hmm
summers free, and it would be summers growing up there in Brule,
Nice.
back and forth from Barron to Brule, from Barron to Brule. Um, Again, a great way to grow up, a
Yeah.
great way to grow up, and a fine background.
Yep. Yep. So talk about you mentioned a lot in the book about being really into writing when you were growing up. Um, you know, talk about that a little bit if you can.
It was mostly a series of journals or little stories that you'd try to make, obviously
Mm.
full of mispunctuation and bad grammar, but you have to start somewhere, right?
Yep.
Uh,
Yep.
and even at an early age, I could tell, I couldn't do a lot of things as well. Math, not my strong suit, for sure.
Yeah.
Numbers, not my strong suit. But writing, for whatever reason, and I think it was my father, I think he encouraged me to read at an early age.
Wasn't he a
Read.
math teacher though at the
Yes,
same
he
time?
was a math teacher, so I don't know why I didn't math and physics, and I don't know why I didn't do that. But he always had books. I mean, shelves of books that were just,
hmm
as you're growing up, incredibly looking titles. Anything from the Lord of the Rings to John Steinbeck to Gordon McQuarrie, who was a famous outdoor writer. And he kind of pushed me that way, and
hmm
the books were always available, and you could see he'd look out of the corner of his eye as I pick one of them up, and that I think got me into writing more than anything, reading, and
Sure.
it's a habit I've carried with me all my life.
And I think it was actually probably some of our, because you used to be our Dungeons and Dragons dungeon master for our
Oh
epic
yes,
weekend sessions,
yes.
and I think it was that kind of stuff that got, because my dad wasn't, my parent, I mean, they were readers, but not like they didn't have, we had the Reader's Digest condensed books, but we didn't, it wasn't something where we had books full of fantasy stuff to explore. And, my dad was a truck driver, so he had a different focus,
Yes, yes.
on that kind of thing. So I think it was some of that exploration that we did in high school of D&D and some of those books that kind of got me into it. But so,
You start opening worlds in your
yeah.
mind, and that, you can look, well, Dungeons and Dragons, I guess people look, well, that, what a geeky way to do anything. But I tell you what, for opening your mind
Yeah.
to
Think on your feet.
untold possibilities,
Yep. Yep.
not a bad way to keep track of your kids on a night when here we were in in the basement or the bedroom playing Dungeons and Dragons all night. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Yeah.
My mom, I think, really appreciated that because now, you know, as your kids are growing older, you know where they are, you know?
Yep.
Um,
Yep. Yeah. There was definitely trouble we could have gotten into, I'm sure. So, but
well, that'd be another podcast. We won't mention.
yeah, I think I did actually tell my mom it was my 18th birthday when we went cross country skiing at like 1 o'clock in the morning,
I do
and it was,
remember that, and wasn't it cold? I think it
yeah,
was
it was
very.
like 30 below zero or something like that, and I think we almost died. But yeah,
Let's go cross country skiing. What a better way to celebrate your 18th birthday?
yeah, and I snuck into the house to get my skis with my parents sleeping, and sorry, mom, but I mean, it was one of those things you kind of had to do, I guess. But so
We didn't die. We lived, I guess.
yeah, might have almost lost a few digits, but no worries. So
I mean, that's a good way to grow up. If you
yeah,
think about it, the worst the worst case scenario you have growing up is almost dying cross country skiing in the middle of the night. It's not too bad.
so were books, I mean, you mentioned, some of the math and science was tough for you. Were books kind of an escape for you in high school too, along with running? And
Yes, even when I was, say, a freshman in high school, you know, it was a little bit different back then. We had an open campus, and kids would shoot basketball in the gym.
yeah,
But I'd spend a lot of time, especially early on. Well, later in life, later in my high school career, I guess I ingrained myself into the society more. But I'd spend
hmm,
time in the library. I mean, I'd go through whatever
yeah,
books they had there, and that's where I'd spend my lunch break. You know, reading, and
hmm,
it always came easy to me.
hmm,
Like I say, math comes easy to some people, history comes easy to some people, but I could plow through a book
yeah,
fast. And I
yep,
still can, you know, not exactly speed reading, but I could go pretty quick.
yeah,
I poured over probably the Barron High School library, every book that they had. Ray
hmm,
Bradbury was always my favorite.
hmm,
Just whatever I could lay my hands on, you know, and that really helped me later in life with my writing, for
yep.
sure. It did. Um,
So when you went to after high school, you went to lacrosse. We were roommates my freshman year, your sophomore year. Um, why did you pick lacrosse?
I think I went to a cross country camp actually the summer before my senior year and uh, talked to the coach a little bit and
Hmm.
scenery it was incredible as you know
Yep.
the
Yep.
scenery was just it had me at hello right on the Mississippi River, the bluffs. I'm like, this is where I need to go.
Yeah. Yep. And
Different
then
scenery
never
from.
mind the fact that it's that UW lacrosse has a multi-national champion running program and things like that too. So
Yeah,
it's
I did run cross country in college and track. I definitely wasn't this
hmm,
a superstar by any means, but I still have friends to this day from the
hmm,
team.
sure.
Obviously, it was a social thing.
Yeah.
As much as you were in the band in lacrosse too, you know,
Hmm.
yes, you were a very good instrument player, but you were never going to probably go on with that later in life. But it was a social thing, you know.
Yep.
Uh,
Yep.
it kept you out of trouble a little bit.
Somewhat.
When
Yeah.
you've got a cross country Saturday morning, you probably aren't going to go partying Friday night too much, you know.
Yeah.
Um, but I really love, to this day, I love lacrosse. I have friends that still live there.
Hmm.
All, I know it up and down, all the trout streams, all the little back roads.
Sure.
It's always going to have a fondness in my
Hmm.
college career. Obviously didn't turn out very well, meaning I never did graduate from there. I spent 4 years there though, and
Hmm.
it
So
was.
what do you think your struggles were in college? Just too easy to, I don't know, you tell me, I guess, but
I wouldn't say so much that I struggled. It was just, would you call it attention deficit disorder? There was too much. There was too much. We grew up in small town, rural Wisconsin, and here, by not being a metropolis, lacrosse was a lot bigger than I was used to.
yeah.
There was so much. There was
Hmm.
so much. Um, my college experience was invaluable.
Yeah.
Invaluable. Now you're living on your own. There's nobody getting you up to go to school. You've got to do it yourself.
Yep.
Uh, you have to do it yourself. learning to get along with people, uh, people that you may not exactly like, but you're still got to get along with them. That's what college was to me.
Hmm.
Seeing a little bit bigger picture that Barron, Wisconsin wasn't, the borders of Barron, Wisconsin was not the world.
Yeah.
Um,
Yep.
you're in lacrosse, and now you see what the world can be.
Yep. And lacrosse can definitely, you can access, you can find a party every day of the week if you want to, and
Yes,
three
yes.
times on Saturday.
And,
So
thank goodness that I was cross country and track, or I probably would have found those parties 4 days a week.
yeah, I had my share of those Thursday, Friday, Saturday night type things. But so what was kind of the tipping point for you? And I'm going to read from the Road of Dreams here in a little bit, but you kind of got to the point where you were done with school. Was that by choice or just, or was it, just struggling?
I don't know that it was by choice, but yeah, well, obviously it was by choice.
Yeah.
I guess I've become disillusioned with academia. It's a rigid structure,
Hmm.
maybe you call me, maybe I was a little bit too immature and didn't really understand. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, what you wanted to be.
Yeah.
Um, but a lot of the structure got a little bit too much for me, I think.
Hmm.
One of my philosophy instructors called me a free spirit.
Yeah.
Well, this would have been once somebody knew that I was gone and traveling on the road. Oh, he was always a free spirit. Um, I don't know if that's a compliment or I took it to a fault, but
Hmm.
I wanted to see how big the world was. Now I went from Barron to lacrosse, and let's see how big the world is after this.
Yep. Yep. So I want to do a little bit from A Dream Less Traveled, one of the short stories in there, just to talk through that, or just to kind of help set that stage. But I think we talked about some of it already. But one might think that the wonders plopped on my lap would have set me up on the trail for surefire greatness as a writer and outdoor journalist. I discovered a key that unlocked a magical door into the grandeur of Wisconsin's finest country. I had a supportive family and firm connections in the outdoor community. I had developed a solid foundation of observation and journalistic writing through my wanderings and note taking, and I was well read from turning the pages of countless books in the libraries of my youth. And this is, I think you're writing this a little bit later, I'm assuming, after all of this and kind of looking back, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. So add a stint of college education to the mix, and by God, I was going to be the next Ernest Hemingway. Publishers and paper sellers were going to fight over the chance to get first crack at my poetry. I thought, I thought, I thought. I swear I only took a couple steps into the future before I was lost on the road of dreams. I diligently enrolled myself at the University of Wisconsin La Crosse to harness my visions of journalistic immortality, only to find out in short order that the written trail upward toward the heights of academia was ripe with gorgeous diversions. I spent 4 years on a scholarship of blissful ignorance along the Mississippi Valley of southwestern Wisconsin, cutting classes and exploring the surrounding miles of towering bluffs, hardwood valleys, and bubbling coulee streams. I was a backwoods kid let loose in a candy store, and I ate until my guts were ready to explode. Sleeping on a mattress in the basement of a juggernaut party flat that made John Belushi's crib and Animal House look like a Sunday school classroom, staying up till the crack of dawn discussing philosophy and writing mumbled proverbs. If I wasn't hitchhiking my way across the trout draws and the bluff-swept hills, I was learning to write the names of a dozen different beer brands in a dozen different languages. When I finally shambled from the university classrooms with my hobo sack slung over my shoulder, it was overflowing with beautiful scenery, countless friends, and some heart pounding lessons of love. About the only thing I didn't have room for in my pack was a college degree. Why on earth the university overseers didn't send me packing in a timelier fashion is a mystery that will never be properly explained. So, compounding the spinning compass in my head, I'd managed to develop a dire case of wanderlust, the lion's share of the blame resting squarely on the shoulders of American novelist Jack Kerouac and John Steinbeck. So you were ready to go travel a little bit and kind of see what was up.
Yep. And it was exactly those books that sent me on a way. I don't know if you've ever read On the Road by Kerouac
No,
or
I haven't. I'm going to have to. Yeah.
yeah, it was a I think I wrote it was a breakthrough novel, and it was written what would that have been in early set in the early 50s, early
Okay.
60s. But he took it to another level. His
Yeah.
characters were crazy. So I read that and read that again. John Steinbeck obviously was a well-traveled journalist, writer.
He had his travels with Charlie you mentioned here in the book
Yeah,
as well. So,
a lot of those books that I kept on reading through college,
hmm
I don't want to say I was self-taught, but whatever I could lay my hand on, whatever perked my interest, that's what I read. And I started reading some of that stuff, and I'm like, wow, if they can do it, so can I.
sure, sure.
There we went. There we went.
So your brother Dan was obviously kind of in the same boat at the same time, roughly.
He was doing a lot better. I think I even wrote in the college game that I was.
Yeah.
He eventually, I think he got a double degree, architecture and accounting.
Okay.
He was doing real well at UW Milwaukee, but I suckered him into saying let's take a semester off and see the country. A
Sure.
couple of Wisconsin kids, let's see what's out there.
I don't think it
That's
was that hard to convince him probably to do it either. So,
no,
but
I always had a little bit of sway over him, and maybe I shouldn't have done it, but I knew that with a little bit of talking and a little bit of sweet talking, and there we went.
and I'm sure your mom Louise just kind of shook her head at all of this and
Ooh, she wasn't happy, put it that way.
yeah.
She wasn't happy, but especially with him because he was the youngest. He was the
Yep.
baby, and here big bad me was going to take him on a little bit of trip, and that's where my education for my writing really began.
Yep. It's been 30 years. Sheaves of journal paper fall from a sealed envelope and spread heavy on the desk of reality. My heart races with the rhythm of the passing clock, eager to unroll the concrete cracks of road-worn pages and thumb through the words of mountain trails and sand dune beaches. Where the asphalt ends, that's where the soul of my penciled ramblings really begins. Rifling through my journals with the shaking hands of age. Oh, come on. You were,
I mean, you got to figure this introduction was only written a couple years ago, and
I know, but yeah, you're not that old. Where you're 51, right?
look at
And
me, I got a hat. I got to cover my bald head. No, not
yeah,
really. Yes.
I got a few gray hairs too, so I can't talk about that. But I see sunburned brows, packs on our back, and miles to go. I see us kneeling in the glow of a full moon on an ocean cape to watch dolphins leap in the spray. Paging back further, balancing across wet leaf gorges on the backs of fallen giants high in the misted forests of the Appalachian Mountains, sliding down the rocky trails to camp in the driving rain with clothing soaked and temperatures plummeting, searching through gear for lost car keys in the light of a smudge fire, shivering and arguing about who lost them and who was going to die first of hypothermia, finally finding the keys in a forgotten pack pocket and breathing a grateful sigh that we would survive to greet another mountain morning. That's one thing I remember about Dan is that he did like to argue and talk, till the cows come home. So
Yeah, we had you're living in close contact on the road for that long, and
yeah,
you're going to have some arguments.
yep,
You
yep,
have some arguments.
yep.
Uh,
And I talked about this in the last podcast, but that's what me and my family are going to be doing starting next year is doing that exact same thing. But I'm taking my wife and 3 kids on the road, so it's going to
yes.
be, we'll have a little bit more space, but not much. I mean, so
But it is
any words of
it's a
wisdom?
big it is a great adventure, that's what it is.
Yep.
And this is where I kept meticulous journals. So
hmm
the whole Road of Dreams section, while I may have changed some of the words around, came right out of the journals that I kept.
Awesome.
Like I keep these journals, and my wife, my current wife now, we weren't married yet. I'd send them out every week. We'd hit a post office, and I'd send these journals to her for safekeeping, so I wouldn't
Nice.
lose them.
Were you guys dating in college then, Denise?
No, I didn't meet her till a little bit after I was working in Milwaukee at the time
Okay.
after college.
Okay.
That's where I met her.
hmm
But so I just met her before we left. Well, that's a good way to start a relationship. Well, I really like you, but guess what? we're hitting the road. You
Yeah.
may see this again, you may not, but I sent her back all the journals,
Hmm.
and a lot of the sketches. My brother really, as an artist, that's where he
Yeah, there
started
are some
going
beautiful
too.
sketches here. I'll see if I can figure out how to paste a few of them into the podcast video and things like that, just to kind of show things like the map of Barron or some of your, especially for Road of Dreams. He's got some great pictures in there, and I haven't made it all the way through the book yet because there's a lot of stories in here about Barron, about your travels, about experiences up in Brule. It's
Yes.
it's an awesome book, but
Yeah, but the Road of Dreams, that's what really set me up. I mean, I
yeah.
learned I learned a lot. Now I learned that there's different paths to education
Hmm.
where maybe my mainstream didn't lay this way, but it laid this way.
Yep. Yep.
Learning for learning's sake, that
So
stuck with
you
me
seem like
forever.
you're much more of a hands-on type learner, you know, pursue your dream kind of thing. Is that?
Yeah, I needed to understand
Yeah.
that, well, life on the road, obviously I wasn't going to live there forever, but I
Hmm.
learned people people are the same but different wherever you go in the country. You've got good people, you've got bad people, but by and large, human nature, I came to believe, is good.
Yeah.
I really believe it's good. Um,
Hmm.
but
So you gotten out of college for a little bit. You started working at a printing plant
yes.
and met Denise, your wife. How many years have you been married now?
This is bad. I'm glad you put that on here. I
20
would
plus.
20 plus. Yes,
Yeah.
go 20 plus.
Which is, it's kind of funny that you talk about that you just left her, that you left to go on your journey, because a month after I met my wife, I had just gotten laid off from my job in 2009 and got a contract to go work in England for a month. So about a month, yeah, less than a month after we met, we were doing a long distance relationship. At least we had Skype back then, but
Yes, yes,
this
yes.
was 2009, so we had a few tools of the trade, but to keep in touch. But you know,
But I've I always wanted to. We had the foresight to know that before kids, before marriage, before life comes along, that we have this one chance,
hmm,
and that we had the foresight somehow between us to know that we're going to take this. We're going to
yeah,
take this chance. We're going to go for what we were gone for 2 months, I guess, on the road camping, just seeing
yeah, at
everything,
least that, yeah,
and we took the shot. Now it'll stick with me and stick with my brother all our
hmm,
life.
yep, yep,
You'll go through hard times. You'll think, well, now we've got jobs, and you can still think back on that. Oh, do you remember when that
yeah,
we did this?
yep, yep. So your first camp for the night was pitched smack on the border of Illinois and Indiana in the groves of Kickapoo Park, a forested island in the middle of a flat farm field horizon. Whoever planted this rising canopy of leaves must not have received the memo that clear cutting trees is the law of the land around here. It was a bit eerie spending the first night in an unknown environment. We both slept restless. Possums and raccoons rustled outside our tent at all hours of the night. Distant sounds were foreign. They echoed across the open and into our tree grove camp, sounding close enough to touch even though they were miles removed. We finally drifted off when a light rain started to fall. It sounded fine and peaceful on the rainfly, and it sent varmints creeping back into the fields. Morning dawned, wet-leafed and foggy, and it was comforting to see that our gear had held up dry. A couple of drips here and there, but plenty of days coming to work out our camping bugs. I crawled out early to explore a few catfish channels on the outskirts of the forest. At least that's what the signs along their muddy banks said they were. Considered rummaging through the car trunk for the fishing gear, but wasn't certain of the season and state game laws. I went to college to be a writer, so I'm pretty sure that Indiana and Illinois both begin with I, but to tell the truth, I failed miserably at geography. So math and physics and geography.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I wasn't even certain which of the two Midwestern states we're actually in. So you're still trying to figure out there if you were doing the right thing to an extent.
When we actually left, we didn't even know which way we wanted to head. We actually really did flip a coin. Do we want to go east or west? And that's how we ended up going east. I think I wrote that in there, but that was honest to goodness. That's the truth.
Yep. Yep.
We didn't. We went down into Chicago and are we going east? Are we going west? Flipped the coin and we headed east.
With a 1972 Chevy Nova in
Yes. Yeah.
tow. Yeah. I guess one line that stood out to me a little bit later, that when you were back in past Indianapolis, was the stars came out crisp, and I know they're the same constellations we see in Wisconsin, but seeing them in a strange camp far from home away makes them seem more mysterious. It was almost as if they were looking down and telling me something, drifting in a random orbit day and night. No set plan except to shoot endlessly away from their origin.
And that, I guess that's what my brother and I were both doing,
Yeah.
shooting from our origin, getting out there, trying to push yourself a little bit beyond your comfort zone.
Yep.
I mean, granted, we weren't all that, 300, 400 miles away from home, but now you're in a different environment and everything
Hmm.
seems, you're still in America, but everything seems strange.
Yeah.
Everything
You
seems
said this
strange.
was what, 1992, so no cell phones, no, no internet barely at that time, at that point in time. So you had an
No,
ATM card maybe?
I think we had some traveler's checks or some money stuffed in our socks and underwear. I don't know. Um, Basically, whatever we'd saved through working that would have gone to college, we're going to spend it on the road. And granted, we were just camping, so the
Yeah.
expenses were little or nothing. Gas,
Hmm.
a bit of cheese and sausage to eat, some peanut butter, a six pack of
SpaghettiOs I
beer
saw
here
in
and there,
there.
and
Yep.
spaghettios. And we camped the whole way.
Hmm.
Camped everywhere.
Yep, I saw that in Appalachian Trail. You eventually ended up out there. Tent pitched and no firewood gathering chores to be allocated because you ran into a park ranger Rick with his tobacco pouch had somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 cords of fire-ready timber they had scrounged for themselves from the endless forest and had forbidden you from collecting your own firewood.
And again, this is this is a nonfiction work, so it's while it may read like fiction, it's the honest to goodness truth. This guy was there, and he did have tons of wood, but
I'm going to
you're not
keep an
going
eye
to
on you.
people are not going to take as much of a stick, and he kept an eye on us the whole time we were there too.
Wow.
As far as even
Uh,
going up in the trails, he'd be eyeing us. What are you doing?
yep.
You're walking? What are you doing?
Hmm. Yeah. Tent pitched and no firewood gathering chores to be allocated. A towering trail beckoned me into the last of the mountain light, rising through stately oaks before dropping into the ruins of a small meadow with a crumbling rock wall around the edges and an ancient well dug into the center. I mean, I could just keep on. Inlaid stones swirled down the sides of the well to a shimmering pool on the bottom. Shredded light cut through the fog above the wooded mountains and lit the fallen rocks of the meadow fence into a picture that would have been worthy of a fairy tale book. A spirit from long ago had picked the perfect spot to carve a niche in the hills, and now, countless years later, a simple kid from Wisconsin was laying on a carpet of drifting leaves with mountains leaning over and watching the last rays ripple his reflection in a wishing well. That's a great picture.
Yep, it's right out of a fantasy,
Yeah, no kidding.
right out
Yeah.
of somewhere where now you are far removed. Now you're there, almost like Tolkien, whatever. But it
Hmm.
was there that I found that well, and it was just unbelievable,
Hmm. But
unbelievable. Here you are.
you were bound and determined that night not to give in to the ranger and buy some firewood from him. So it was a cold camp that night. But
Yep, and I think I wrote Dan did. He went off to do something and head over first into the gully he went because it was dark and it was raining and
yep,
uh,
yep,
but you can look back at it and laugh, but it was a little bit hard sometimes.
yeah. So then you moved on throughout the Appalachians. It sounds like you spent a lot of time in the Appalachian Trail, kind of going up and down.
Yep, we were up in the Appalachians a good week and a half. I don't even remember. Time started to get fuzzy up there.
Hmm.
It was at this time what it was late September, early October maybe, and it was unbelievable. The scenery, the leaves all
Hmm.
changing. Nobody is around for miles.
except for the
even
Green Bank National Radio Astronomical Observatory.
yes, I had to throw a little bit of education in there. That place was just incredible. It was just incredible. You could walk right underneath these radio dishes
Yeah,
and they're huge, they were huge.
nice.
And
Get
there's green
a
apples.
a good way to satisfy your kind of science fiction uh, questions of the day. So
Yeah, and you they didn't charge you anything. You just walked right in there.
wow,
You know, no microwaves or garage openers in the little town, which had to be 100 and change, because it was it
you
was
could
just
probably set a microwave next to the dishes and get them cooked just sitting there, or a hot dog next to the dish and get it cooked just sitting there. But
it was one of those fall days where you are in science
hmm
fiction land right there.
yep,
Pretty
yep.
neat.
Yeah, so you kept on going through the Appalachians. Uh, we'd run the country as far east as possible without turning the Chevy into a boat, splashing up against the Atlantic Ocean across the Delaware River and into a network of channels, bridges, ferry boats, and sand spits. I just can't believe how you found some of the places you found without really a map or any. Is just blind blundering in the
Well,
dark, or
we
did
had
you
an
have
atlas.
something?
We had an atlas, so we had a general idea of where we were
Yeah,
going. We just didn't know exactly where we were going. Um, but once we hit
that's part
the
of the
Atlantic
journey, right?
Ocean, then now we are really in a different land. This is
Yeah.
really in a different land.
Yep, digging our base camp into the sand of a sheltered cove, we drifted into a totally different type of camping, trenching out bunkers to duck down from the shotgun pellets of driving sand from the ocean side, and pegging down the edges of the tent with rocks instead of tent stakes so it wouldn't turn into a sailboat and set off on its own. If one doesn't mind gourmet sand grains in their canned spaghetti and wind hardened bread that tastes like salt water, then this is absolutely positively the life for you.
I don't know if you've ever camped on a beach, but it's just like that. Now you're on an ocean beach and there's sand and everything.
I have on the California side.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, it was more in an RV of my brother-in-law's, but yeah, so not quite tent based, but I can imagine just sand. It was bad enough with what we had that sand was everywhere, but yeah,
But now it's a little bit more temperate. You're by the
yep.
ocean. It was just unbelievable. The
hmm
sights you can see in everywhere you look. There's wild horses out there. There's
Yeah, I thought that was crazy. Is that
moose. Yes, it's just incredible.
in Delaware, as populated as that part of the country is, that stuff can still exist and things like that.
And
So,
I don't know if it's the same still nowadays.
yeah.
Today, this is what 30 some years ago.
hmm
But back then it was, yeah, got some crab traps and try to catch some crabs, which didn't work out so well, but
You tried. All right.
yeah, yeah,
So,
we tried.
yep. Let's see. Where was I going to go? I was just actually going to read that. He finally snared one crab the size of a $50 and played a rousing game of paper, scissors, rock to see who'd get to boil it and eat it. But the damn thing scurried back into the water while we were fighting it out. I guess the moral of our crab fishing adventure is that if paper did cover rock, roasted squid on a stick was looking to be the prominent winner in the night's dinner menu. Until you get lucky and a family with a distinct New York accent was pitching camp next to us when we returned from the great cab hunt. They drove a monster four-wheel drive wagon, and their crisp 10-person bungalow tent looked to be far cleaner and more hospitable than my old college apartment. They were setting up a table complete with tablecloth, candles, and a chilled bottle of wine. The ocean night was in waist deep in the smell of linguine and clams bubbling over a shining cook stove, which had to be completely surreal for everything you guys have been going through.
It was it was unbelievable. Yes, they had everything. They had everything. It didn't even look like camping. It looked like oh wow, it was crazy.
Yeah, it was like kind of your Grey Poupon moment. Beg pardon, certainly don't mean to interrupt your supper, but we see you have managed to procure some firewood.
We
Trade
had
some.
snuck into a on the crab hunt. We'd snuck into a vineyard, I guess, and just pilfered it dry. Obviously private property. I
Yeah.
probably, but it's just wood laying around. We didn't cut
Yep.
down any trees. We
hmm
piled the trunk full of wood,
hmm
and
Yep.
they wanted some,
Well, we
but
won't have a statute.
nobody
I'm
wants
sure
some.
there's a statute of limitation. So, but
Yeah, exactly. That's the worst thing that I'm going to get pegged for. I'm in good shape.
that's why you had a great picture of the Atlantic evening rose in Grand Manner. We were still rubbing our full bellies and toasting the stars with our wine glasses when a huddle of surf fishermen with heads bowed into the breeze walked by our camp and down to the crashing waves to set up heavy casting rods for striper and sea bass. Our poor squid was beginning to look like he wouldn't survive to see the morning, so we cut up what was left of him, grabbed our own fishing gear, and rolled into the surf to try our luck. How on earth one of us wasn't killed outright from the devilry that subsequently transpired amounts to somewhat of a miracle. Our rods and reels were fine and dandy for pulling in trout and sunfish on the lakes and streams back home, but we quickly discovered that an incoming tide coupled with 3-foot swells of Atlantic surf made even the heaviest Wisconsin whitewater look like a lazy river. It was hard enough simply casting light rigs in the swirling ocean breeze, not to mention the fact that our squid was chronically washed back onto the beach in a matter of seconds. So, what did you do? You carried your line out far enough for it to be past the breakers,
We swam. I ended up having to swim it out. Again, another game of
but Dan
paper.
cheated.
I to this day I say he cheated. So now you don't know if there's sharks out there. I don't know if there were or weren't, but now
Yep.
you're swimming out the lines 50 yards into the ocean in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
Uh,
And who knows, undertows or anything like that, or, where's
oh,
it drop off or whatever. I mean, yeah.
who knows? Maybe get tangled up, but
So you had to go
we never
50
did catch
yards out into the water as the crow flies, but in pitch black ocean water, which may or may not have held sharks, which may or may not have been hungry for squid or dumb Wisconsin swimmers. 50 yards of breaststroking in the general direction of the English Channel while holding sharpened hooks and leaden life preservers is an endless voyage. But somehow you had mermaids looking out for you that night because you didn't drown. So,
no, we didn't drown, and we never did catch a fish, but that was an experience. That was an experience.
so you made at that point. Did you flip another coin to head south, or was that just because it was getting deeper into fall?
Well, we wanted to go into Florida.
Yep.
My grandfather and grandmother were still alive at the time, and we knew that we were going to maybe stop and see them for at least a day, which we did. That was the highlight of the trip because now we got fed,
Showers.
wined and dined and showered. Yes, I don't think I put that in the book, but we knew we were going to head to Florida.
You put the one night you guys had to double down for a motel room, I think you put in there because
That
all
came
your gear was wet.
out of the Appalachians, and
Yep,
everything was wet, and it was just kind of a mess.
yep, yep. Now
So that was
Your False Cape journey, and I looked this up too, was interesting as well. Of we should have guessed what we were in for when the nervous overseers made us take an orienteering course and sign a waiver at the state park office.
they did. Yep.
Did they ask you, do you know how to use a compass? Do you know which direction, you're going and things like
They just
that?
wanted to make sure that you knew what you were kind of getting into, Mostly they
Yeah.
wanted a waiver, I think, saying if something happens to you out there, it's your fault, not ours.
Yep.
Because it's no vehicles allowed. You're hiking in. It was a ways. It was
Yeah.
12 miles way back onto this Cape.
Hmm.
No
And
fires
again, no
around.
GPS, no cell phones, no
No
nothing,
nothing. I don't even know if we had a park map. They just said, okay, this is the way to go. Little gate and you're off to the races.
Yeah. So False Cape, it's there's a lot of shipwreck survivors that had lived there, tried to make a city out of, or tried to make a town out of it, and survive there without luck. We were told there were ancient grave markers hidden in the sand to mark their passing. We were warned to listen closely. Shipwrecked spirits from long ago were still heard singing upon the furthest reaches. So it's one of those. It's kind of an easy place to shipwreck because of the proximity to Chesapeake Bay, I
Yes,
believe, right?
yes. And now it's nearing Halloween, so they made sure to tell the
It could be
ghost story.
hurricane season.
Yeah, tell the ghost stories before you go out there.
Yep.
I am not kidding. You could feel it when you're out there. You could
It,
feel
it,
there's certain places in this world where that you are in a paranormal area, and this was one of them.
yep.
This was one of them.
And I remember Dan having a good imagination also for that kind of stuff. Like he was, that he would, that, I mean, I guess it goes to both you guys for, that you both had a good imagination for that stuff. And I think I do too, to, what am I hearing, kind of a thing.
But there is a difference between imagination and what we saw there, and what you had to be there to understand it.
Yeah.
But you're miles from anybody, nothing but the ocean stars over you. There's no fires allowed. You don't see any lights. I mean,
Wow.
and it was eerie. It was eerie. You
Hmm.
just knew that there was presences out here. I mean,
Sure. Nice.
I
Yeah.
seriously believe in it, but you know,
Hmm.
I guess we experienced what we experienced.
Yep. Yep. So you spent the morning diving into the swells, lying on your backs, watching the salt dry on our skin, and the ocean waves crashing against the endless horizon. Walked in the shallows. This was after you had navigated your way to the, kind of the across the. I guess it's an island, kind of a north-south island.
Yeah,
Made your way to the ocean. Yeah, you could only have the water that you were carrying with you, so they were holding steady, but the salt air sipped from them constantly. I think you had a meal of sausage or something that doesn't really help your water consumption either.
in
But
retrospect, we didn't know. But whatever water you brought with you, that's what you were drinking because there was no water out there.
yep, yep. Now, if you still had you made shellfish necklaces. If you still had those, I'd be, that would be
You
awesome.
know, they were awesome, but where they went, I don't know. I don't have it here.
Yep,
Unless it's
yep.
tucked away in a box somewhere. But
Hmm.
these necklaces were just things of atrocious beauty. I mean, they were
Yeah.
gaudy, they were huge. Um, but we had, yeah,
Yep. So and then on one of the nights, you had a great picture in here. The sun sank and the moon rose full. For a single moment in time, both celestial orbs hung in perfect balance across from one another over ocean and land. We sat on a high peak of sand and watched dolphins leap in the glow. We didn't talk. We were lost in our own thoughts. Moonrise over the ocean with nothing but dolphins and flowing dune grass for company. Nobody for miles, not even the lights of a ship on the water, only glistening fins and moon diamonds on the waves. It's a scene that I know I will carry with me like a lantern in the darkness. And no matter how hard the world tries to beat me down, the only key I'll ever need to escape is hidden through the doorway of this memory. That was awesome.
yep. And that's one of the things we learned on that trip, that there are things, life is gonna come, but you're gonna hold some of these things
Hmm.
against bad parts of life to come. And
Sure.
that was one of those moments. It was unbelievable.
Hmm. Then you did manage to, we ate the last of our crackers and saved some crumbled granola for later, set out following a tiny path into the overgrown jungle. The brush tunnels were low enough to pull at our hair with their claws of thorns. Birds skittered in the tangles, scolding and swooping. Maybe they were hunting crabs, maybe something bigger was hunting them. Crawling low through the sandy understory, we broke into a clearing and we finally ran headlong into the shipwrecked spirits of False Cape. The makeshift cemetery was set on the highest point of land where live oaks grew tall and dune grass built a natural fence. It was a hidden garden. Grave markers were nailed from worn cypress wood and leaned at every angle. If they once had names, the wind and sand had long since carried them away. It was a haunted night sight, but not necessarily a haunted feeling. It was the source of the ghostly voices on the sea wind. The ancient cemetery was the heartbeat of False Cape. We held our breath, waiting, but no ghostly pirates issued forth from the sandy ground to chase us through the grove with rusted sabers. Sunlight dappled through the jungle of trees, and all was still. You're just waiting for Johnny Depp to jump out at you,
Exactly.
and
I mean, we did find it, and once you were there, you knew that this is not a scary place. This
Mhm,
is it's a place of peace, and
mhm.
cemetery was one of those. You know what I mean? You've seen some of them with the old tombstones, but these
Yep.
had like wood. The wood, they are all. It was all made of wood. It was
Yeah.
all made of wood.
Yep. So you wrote some letters the next day, kind of took some time to each other, wrote some letters to your mom and dad, uh, assuring them that the golden boy, Danny with his blonde hair, would be returned to his studies when we returned and would undoubtedly make enough money after he graduated to take care of us all. The final letters were as strange as my surroundings, addressed to friends back at college, explaining why I left so suddenly with my degree unfinished. Also wrote a note to my college girlfriend who's likely on the trail behind me forever and has a brighter future ahead of her because of it.
Which indeed happened, I think. I don't even know what ever became of her, but yep, I'm sure
Oh,
she had
yeah.
a bright future because of it.
Told them not to worry, everything was great. I'd taken their hearts with me on the journey. Told them life on the road was just like school except for the exams, and I tried to relate the analogy of a ship wrecking on reefs, how it becomes sink or swim survival to reach a safe port in the aftermath. I sat in a sun-dappled glade on an ocean cape and tried to convince them that I'd been led astray by a mermaid's song. But then you decided not to mail those last final letters. So,
Into a bottle they went, a
yep.
water bottle, and out into the ocean. They're still floating to this day, probably.
Yep. So did you feel how far along your journey? This was about a month or so in
Yeah,
to the journey.
yeah, a good month.
Yeah. Yep, good month and a half maybe. But where were you at as far as, wanting to, were you ready to go home yet, or you still had more? You knew you had more journey and go.
I think we had more journey to go, but this was a turning point where I started. It wasn't everybody else's fault. It wasn't school that made me go, and people
Yeah.
were this way and that way. Eventually, you're taking responsibility for what you've done,
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think this was one of those moments that the only one that forced me to go on this road of dreams, if you could say force, was me.
Hmm.
I've got to take responsibility for my actions, and this is where I started to come to grips with that. I guess you'd say.
Do you think it was partly that, you do you feel like college shouldn't have been a choice from the start, but you kind of got pressured into it, or that you felt like you should go to college, or that you had to?
It probably back then it probably was expected that you're going to go to college.
Yeah.
You're going to go to college, and I'm glad I did.
Hmm.
Um, but it definitely, the academia environment was probably not for me. Eventually, it
Hmm.
definitely wasn't. Not any fault. Again, it's not it was not the class's fault. It was not the professor's fault. It just wasn't a fit where I was comfortable learning in.
Sure.
Uh, and then,
But you kind of had to go through that to, experience it firsthand
yeah,
before you really knew. Yeah.
eventually you have to come to grips with it isn't everybody else doing it. This has been my choice from the get-go.
Hmm.
And once you start to come to grips with that, everything starts to get a little bit easier. You
Hmm.
learn the way you learn, and that's true for everybody. Some people
Hmm.
learn spatially, verbally.
Hmm.
Um, Once you find your niche, the way you want to learn or the way you can learn, you can learn and grow is at your own pace or in the way that suits you. But
Hmm.
eventually you have to quit pointing your finger at somebody else saying they did this, they did this, they did this, and
Yeah.
you come to take responsibility for your own actions, and things become easier then.
Okay. Yeah, we'll build on that in just a second here, but I wanted to finish off this Road of Dreams piece quick. You've got a lot of like small excerpts from the Everglades and from New Orleans and Florida and things like that. And
Yep.
I love the one of your time with the Dismal Swamp and where's the guy? Your evangelical preacher guy that you ran into. And I can't find the section right at this time,
The
but you made it out of Falls Cape. You made it down to Florida. Eventually made it to the Keys. Must have found your grandparents in there somewhere. So
Yep. And the Keys was another ultimate moment. Now you spend a week and a half, 2 weeks in the Florida Keys, which is the height of everything
yeah,
you come to understand about the Keys. And here you're two kids from Wisconsin. I think actually we came out of Miami the first time we got into the Keys. One of our headlights was out, and I don't think I wrote that in there. We got
no,
promptly pulled over, Now we're two kids. My hair is long. I don't think we had shirts on. I'm up. He took me up. I'm up against the car. He's thinking that we're running drugs or something. We've got Wisconsin plates, and I'm like, what? This is the Florida Keys. What? No, he says this is a bad place. This is a bad place. You've got to get off the street. There's gangs that come out of Miami. We don't know. Then he got another call at something. RV got broken into, so he said, just get off the street, and
Yeah.
we did. Fixed our headlight. But once you got farther into the Keys, everything is
Yeah.
nice.
Because you got tent now staked along the bleached sands of the Florida Keys, 2 steps out of our sleeping bags, and we were taking morning baths in tropical reef-protected waters. Snorkeling beneath the drop-off ledges felt like diving into an aquarium, bright rainbows of fish flashing in water so clear that we could see 50 yards in every direction. That just had to be awesome.
Oh, it was. Yes, it was. So cool.
How much of a switch from False Cape, mood-wise, was it?
Now there's people around. Now you're not way remotely
Yeah,
situated. So it was different. And there's people coming and going in these camps then.
sure.
So it's a little bit different. I mean, you're meeting a lot more people. Say, oh, try
Hmm.
snorkeling over here. Try going over there. There's lobster traps out there if you want to try to raid them, which we never
Yeah,
did. But
yeah. So, and it probably, I mean, you definitely weren't as desolate or anything like that in the Keys. I mean, you could find a grocery store if you needed something to drink or something like that. So,
yeah, now you're meeting you've heard stories about the Keys, but now you are meeting some real characters, some
yeah.
real characters.
Oh, there it is. The army jacketed man who slept in a van that was gaudily painted up in peace signs, flowers, and rainbows, swathed beneath the mangroves, orating his religious theories and ideology, which, packed into a coconut shell, centered on his belief that he was the seventh son of Moses and currently on the run to avoid assassination.
And again, it sounds like you could make this up and it's fiction, but
Yeah,
this happened. To this day, I still have the journals where he actually wrote his little beliefs on it. It's scrawled
nice.
everywhere. Yeah.
But you didn't laugh at him, you didn't make fun of him, and I think any of us as kids might have done that, but you brought him into your camp and had a can of old Milwaukee with him. So
No, I think I wrote, there was a time when Dan and I both would have
yeah,
ridiculed somebody like this, but now we were no longer qualified to judge a book by a cover because we had turned into the same people that we would have passed across the street to avoid, months earlier.
yeah.
Again, it's a learning, something that you can only experience in order to learn.
Hmm.
People, once you get to know them, are just people, no matter what their appearances may be, or their beliefs. And they were a little off, maybe, but we had an
Yeah,
awesome night with the guy.
yeah.
Awesome.
Then you went from there over to New Orleans, and that was kind of the start of the end of your trip, and decided it was time to head back home from there.
Yeah, we'd run out of money. We had no more money, and from there it was a straight shot from New Orleans back to Milwaukee.
Yeah,
We basically made it on fumes, but there we made it.
yep, yep. So the 4 sections of the book, chapter 1 is all your barren short stories
Yep.
and northwestern Wisconsin. Chapter 2 is rural country stories, and I haven't even touched any of those. But why don't you talk a little bit about what Brule means to you guys as a family and to you? And
Yeah, it's a place near and dear to my heart because my grandparents were there since we were little kids. We could just run wild in the woods and the rivers. Now we've got a cabin up there, which is my mom lives up there full
hmm,
time.
yep,
I guess I call it the cabin. It's nicer than my house, I would think. Exploring. Um, but I know so many people up there. From being little to
hmm,
growing big, know the area, especially for the trout fishing and just wandering where you could go into the woods and you could find an adventure whatever way you want to go. I mean, you're just
hmm.
walking as far as you can. The white pines,
And as much wilderness as you guys found around Barron, which is a pretty agricultural area to be by and large.
Yes.
Northern Wisconsin is much more, wild country.
This is wild country where if you find some roads or trails, you break down, you're taking your own chances, you're spending the night, and
Yeah.
it has happened. Just
Hmm.
fantastic. From picking blueberries way out in remote spots to fishing, walking out in pitch black with bears around you after fishing all day.
Yeah.
Where a partridge might jump at your feet and just scare the heck out of you. Um, just the scenery and the people, and it's one of those special places where you keep on returning. Yeah, maybe if I lived up there full time it would be different. The winters
Hmm.
are a little bit harsh.
Yeah.
You're walking in snow up to your waist. They've already had 14, 15 inches of snow early on. Some of it's
Hmm.
melted by now, but it's a
Hmm.
different world is what it is.
Hmm.
Here where I live in Grafton and southeastern Wisconsin, it
It's settled.
could still be early fall, and up there it's already winter.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So chapter 3 was the Road of Dreams that we just kind of covered. Chapter 4 is more home is where the heart is. You've got it titled, which is around the Grafton area and just some of your travels around there. Can you just talk about where you went after the Road of Dreams? You obviously got married at some point.
Yes, I got
Um,
married at some point, and now I've got to get a full-time job, to support kids to come, and so you're still writing, but not, I would say, for 10, 15 years, not to the extent that you're writing before.
sure.
I'd still sell an article here and there.
Well, you
Um,
said just to take one step back, though. You said you had told me that you kind of did go back to college a little bit, right, to kind of get some journalism stuff figured
I
out.
did go to UW Milwaukee and studied some under some professors that were actually writers for the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel, and there I really
That's
learned
awesome.
some
Yeah.
journalistic writing style.
Hmm.
Learned the things where you thought you knew, but now you don't know. You learn how to write under pressure.
Hmm.
Learn how to smash out a story, which is not, again, could I have gone to work for a newspaper? Maybe, but the journalistic writing style, just like maybe school, wasn't exactly for me. It's plug and play, the who, what, why, when, where, interviewing
Yeah.
people for maybe tragedies. How do you feel after your house burnt down? Well, how do you
No
think you
kidding.
felt? How do you think you feel? It's awful. That
Hmm.
really wasn't for me. But the outdoor journalistic, for the outdoor periodicals I write for, I'm able to have a little bit more leeway, a little bit
Hmm.
more human interest, angles, not so much who, what, when, where, why, but maybe just the why. Why go here? Why go
Yeah.
there? Some
So
travel log pieces.
that sounds like it's much more in your sweet spot to do that kind
Yeah,
of writing. Yeah.
there's plenty of people, even in the journalistic arena, that the deer hunting, turkey hunting, the how to. There's people that I'll never even approach. They know
Hmm.
so much. Where I my niche is more the adventure writing. I can
Hmm.
go as far as I can go and see what happens, or
Yeah.
interview somebody that is very good. Nobody wants to know how good I am chasing a deer, but somebody that's super good at it, they want to know about that person. So now I can write about that person.
You do have a good story in the book about chasing down a deer through hip deep snowdrifts in the middle of your first deer
That would
hunting season.
that was still in Barron. Yep, and that did happen. That did happen. Not the smartest thing I've ever done, but it happened. So
Hmm.
yeah, so that's what I enjoy doing now.
Yeah. Where do you think you're going to take things from here? I mean, the book Writing Wild just came out. So
A
in this
little bit of
COVID
marketing.
type,
It's pushing it around here and there. I still write, stories for a few papers when I
mhm,
get time. I've got a total fictional account, uh, building a whole world. And I've had it in progress. I call it Ghost Child. It's well, as being a writer, how you create a world,
Hmm.
a fictional world. And I've had that in various stages for 5, 6, 7 years, and I just wasn't ready to keep on tackling it.
Hmm.
So now maybe Ghost Child finally gets written.
Well, that's part of my journey. You mentioned that I know as a writer. Well, I had stuff percolating in my head for years, but never did anything about it. And
Yes.
so that's part of my journey lately is within the last, I've only started writing within the last year. So at least any of this, fiction, science fiction, fantasy type books. So that's been part of me. My breakout is actually taking the step to put words down on paper. So,
Yes. It's and I've read some of what you've written, and I find it fascinatingly good.
oh, thank you.
Fascinatingly good. But you know how it is. Sometimes there's only so much time in the day.
Yeah.
So you, I wake up early, maybe go for a run, and I'll pound out however much I pound out until I can feel my creativity ebbing, and then I'll
Hmm.
stop. Um,
What time of day do you usually write? It sounds like in the mornings.
yes, I'm always been a morning person.
Yeah.
Have to write in the morning. I might edit later in the afternoon or night, but
Okay.
whenever I'm getting down new, it's got to be in the morning. And that's just me. A lot of
Hmm.
people are different, when it comes. But for me, the morning, I have to get the new stuff down in the morning.
Sure.
Um, but hopefully, Ghost Child, it's still a work in progress. It's probably 50, 60,000 words.
Okay.
That's and
Awesome.
constantly evolving and changing. And
Is that the first book of a planned trilogy type thing, or is that
I don't know if it'll be a trilogy or a standalone. It depends
okay?
how long it comes, and when you find a publisher, you see how it goes.
Sure.
The important thing is if you enjoy doing it,
Yeah.
and and I enjoy building this world. And
Hmm. And
maybe,
that's where I need to spend my time on now is putting the short story together. So I've got a short story that I've written that's about 10,000 words. Um, but to do a short story, you don't necessarily have to do a ton of world building to
right,
flesh it out. But I want it to be a trilogy by the time I get done, and so that's where I've got to spend my time next. Is what is this? What is Delphinia, the world that I've put together? What does it really look like? And build my story arcs and things like that.
that's the
And
fun part.
yeah,
That's the fun part. You're building something that exists in your mind, and you want to share it with somebody.
yep,
Uh,
yep,
and I've read parts of it, and that's exactly what you are doing, I believe.
hmm, yep,
But starting with short stories, a lot of famous writers, that's what they do.
hmm.
You tackle what you can tackle at the time. And I definitely wasn't ready for Ghost Child. I still may not be ready for it.
Yeah,
But with Taconite Creek, that's my first work of fiction. But again, it was based on the rural area where I grew up. So,
okay.
and, with characters I've met, it
But
was
a
easy.
fictionalized version is it?
Yeah.
Can you describe it a little bit for people? So
Taconite Creek is based in about the Depression area when there was a lot of mining going on in northwestern Wisconsin.
hmm,
So a curmudgeonly old uncle of a kid was a miner, and he's struck it rich with iron,
hmm,
where he can manufacture this iron and sell it. It's also a coming of age book where he's got a smaller kid who has lost his father and kind of lost his way. So one summer, the uncle takes him up there because he's going to use him. He's going to put him to work, and
hmm.
he learns a little bit about life. There's a lot of trout fishing in it. A lot of things from my growing up that was very easy for me to write. I'm
Yeah,
definitely glad to tackle that first.
yeah,
Then totally going this way with building a whole world.
yeah. Sure, sure.
But
And
it's
then the
also
shorts.
growing, you start small and you work your way up.
Yeah, yeah. So speaking of trout fishing, it sounded from some of the stories in there that you and your dad had a sometimes heated rivalry in the fishing waters.
My dad, to the day that our
God
last
rest
fishing
his
trip
soul. Yeah.
together, could outfish me every day of the week, and I don't know how he would do it, but he
Pipe
could
stuck in
outfish.
his mouth. All that
Yep,
kind of. Yep.
he could outfish me, and I'd always try to keep up with him, and I'd catch a big fish, and he'd always catch a bigger one. I don't know how he'd do it, but he loved trout fishing, and he instilled the love of trout fishing in me. You know, it took me when I was a little kid, and
Yeah.
I grew to love it. My brother never really got into fishing. Dan never did. He lives in Boulder, Colorado now. He's into climbing mountains and backcountry
Oh,
camping.
jeez.
Um, how many 14,000-foot peaks they can go, but he really goes. You know, you got
Yeah.
Colorado, and
Wow.
he's pretty good at it. If I needed to go up on a 14,000-foot peak, I think I'd have to take him with me as my guide because it's nothing to fool around with unless you know what you're doing.
No, exactly. Yeah. It can get pretty crazy out there pretty quick. So,
He'll start at 2, 3 in the morning with headlamps and just to hit the summit before the weather turns and he can get back down. So, yeah.
so you don't feel that calling for you to as something you need to do. So,
Well, I like the mountains, I guess, but I also love Wisconsin.
yeah.
I firmly believe I will never leave Wisconsin,
Hmm.
just because I've grown to love it. I love the seasons. I even love the winter, I guess. But there's so much to do just living in Wisconsin for myself that it's so diverse. You know,
Hmm.
it's a microcosm of the whole world for me here. There's
Yeah.
always something new.
Hmm.
But I've been out to Colorado several times.
Yeah.
Gone out with him on some little explorations. But yes, that's what he likes to do, and he's good at it.
So what's next for John? I mean, you got one kid in college, I think, right? And
Yep. Um,
how old's
what
your son?
my son, he'll be 21 in January,
Oh, so
so
he's okay. He's older. Okay.
come out of jail, I guess. No, out
If
of
he's
jail.
anything like his father, yeah.
He does a lot of photography. He's very good at that.
Okay.
He works a little bit here and there at some odd jobs. Right now, college was not for him,
Sure.
which, you know, looking at it from a parent, me having to gone through it, I know that
Hmm.
he's very successful. He's got a he's got an eBay business that
Sure.
makes I make at work sometimes look like chicken feed because he's grown up in a different environment and he knows, like I
Hmm.
say, even to set this up, I need one of my kids to set a Zoom up because that's he's very happy and very successful also. College just wasn't for him, which I can
Sure.
totally relate for because it probably wasn't for me either, you know. It
Hmm.
doesn't make you any more or less of anything. It is how it is for somebody.
Hmm. So where do you see yourself in the next 5 years? Kind of keeping on, growing and building the
In,
same?
in the next 5 years, uh, who knows? The way I look at it, life is like you were born in a range of mountains. You know, you say, maybe I'm going to try this mountain. Maybe you can't make it up, but you find a nice place where you're going to sit and enjoy the view and
Yeah.
hang out there for a while. Then eventually you'll move on and I'm going to keep on climbing this peak. I'll climb that peak. There's always new challenges that are out there. You may not exactly know where you're going to be.
Hmm.
Hopefully with this writing wild, it's got the potential to be a very good book.
Yeah.
In the marketplace, will it ever make me rich? No, but I don't know what I'd do with a lot of money. I just probably knows, you know. I'm
Denise
very
probably knows what she would do with it. So
Denise probably does, yes, but
yeah.
I'm pretty comfortable with where I'm at, knowing that I've got what I want. I'm never going to be rich, and I don't know that I'd want to be rich.
Hmm.
So I'll keep on writing, and we'll see where it goes from there, you know.
Sure.
But I try not to get too wrapped up in worrying about it.
Hmm.
If I don't worry about it, things will happen as long as, yeah, I'll have to put the work in.
Hmm.
But if I obsess over it, number one, it's not going to be any fun if I do it because I've obsessed about it too much.
Sure.
Um, but if it happens, you don't want to say carpe diem, seize the day, live in the moment, because I have,
You got
I have to
commitments.
be
So
realistic. I have kids, I have commitments, I have a
yeah.
mortgage payment I have to keep on making unless I want to sleep on the street.
Hmm.
But in a way, I tried to never grow so old that I'm still not keep part of the kid in me, and that
Yeah.
seems to be what I found works for me.
Yep.
It may not be for everybody, but for
Yep.
me, it works fine.
And I think that's a big switch for me too, is going down this road. We're going down to traveling is we're taking away everything. It sounds crazy to sell. We sold our house. We've
Yes,
been renting. We're getting ready to go on the road, and it sounds absolutely crazy to just ditch all of that and take 3 kids on the road and for a couple of years and see what we can see. But to us, it makes perfect sense because I don't want to wait. I'm remarried, so I'm 50 years old, but I've got a 1-year-old son.
yes.
So I don't want to wait till I'm 70 to not have kids when, there's no guarantees that I'll be in any condition to do the kind of things we can do today. So
That's the way I like to look at it too. I mean, the only thing that you are given is on any given day is you have your health or how you feel. So you might as
mhm.
well take advantage of it. That's what I
Yeah,
really believe. Take
yeah,
advantage of it. Tomorrow isn't promised for any of us.
no.
So all you know is what you have today. And I'm jealous. I am jealous of you. In fact, I may try to stow away if there's any room. Look at all those kids. I don't know there will be.
You can sleep on the floor with them. So
But
I
once you
mean,
find me, then you're going to need a babysitter. And you're going to think I'm a
yeah,
babysitter. So I don't know. Um, but that, to me, that is your kids will get an education that they can't get anywhere else by doing
yeah,
that. They'll
yeah,
see things. They may grow up to hate traveling, but who
yeah.
knows? We're going to have an experience that few people can have.
Hmm.
Which on the road of dreams for me was that
Awesome.
I learned a lot of things that you can only learn by getting out there.
Well, I'm happy that you did it. It was almost 30 years ago now that you
Yeah,
guys did that. I mean, to be able to do that back then rather than waiting all this time because I think in some cases I may have been, I don't know if I don't want to say I was scared, but I don't know that I could have had the balls to just step away like that from life for that long. So,
but you obviously took a different path to success, and it worked out
yeah,
for you. You know what I
yeah.
mean?
And
Um,
everybody's path is different, right?
there
I
is no
mean,
cookie
yeah.
cutter. There is no cookie cutter, whatever you call it, that
Yeah.
you have to do this. Looking back on it, maybe college really wasn't for me. I learned a lot, not
Hmm.
exactly in the way you're supposed to learn, I guess, or the historic pattern of learning. But
But if
it
you
was,
hadn't have done it, then you may never have ended up on the road.
yes, it was a stepping stone, and I learned as I went.
Hmm.
Did I make mistakes? Well, I make a ton of mistakes. I still make a ton of mistakes, but
Yeah.
that's the only way you can grow.
Let me ask your wife. Yeah. How many?
She'll tell you. She'll tell you I haven't grown from my mistakes, and I still make them. But,
But I only try to make them like 3 times before I actually learn something from
it
them.
sounds cliche, but that's the only way you can learn. You have to get out of your comfort zone, which you're going
Hmm.
to be doing. You're going to be taking this on the road, and
Yeah.
I'm jealous.
Yeah.
I'm jealous. It's going to be, you're going to learn a lot. You're going to learn more
Hmm.
than you think there is to learn.
Hmm.
You're a smart
We're
guy.
we're not going to go as rustic camping as you guys did. We're going to have like a 40-foot fifth wheel. So,
Yeah,
but
you got kids with you.
yeah, yeah, I can't throw them in a tent every night of the week or something. I
Oh,
could, but yeah,
no, that's going to be, like I say, I'm jealous, and
yeah.
uh, I might stow away. I'll know where you're going to work the bugs out in Barron. So
Yes, yeah. Well, that'll be our first stop is a month up there. I've got older parents, so they're worried enough about us taking kids on the road that need to spend some time up there and that kind of thing. So yeah, stay
before you
tuned.
go, I'm gonna for sure be up there to see you off and
Sounds good.
set
Yeah,
up. That is going to be really neat.
Yep.
You- uh, It's going to be a once in a lifetime thing, and if you can do it right now, especially with the working virtually, or
Yeah.
if anything good has come out of the last year, it's that for working virtually, you'll be able to do it.
Yeah, definitely. And the connectivity options these days are, much better than anytime in the past as well. So still got some work to do on that area, and we'll see where it goes. But yeah. So just to wrap it up, if you want to find a copy of Writing Wild, you can go find that on cablepublishing.com, Amazon as well, for the Kindle version, I think, right?
Yep, yep,
And
it's
then
out there. You'll be able to find it if you search a little bit.
yeah, and then Taconite Creek as well. You can find that out there. What publications have you been printed in that people might be able to find?
I write quite a bit for on Wisconsin Outdoors, which is a newspaper distributed through Quick Trip in Wisconsin.
Okay.
It's a totally advertiser driven paper, so it's free.
Hmm.
Um, so I do quite a bit of work for them, and I also do work for a magazine called Badger Sportsman that's published out of the Fox Valley. That is
Okay.
a subscription based. I think it's $19 for six copies. It goes by monthly. I do quite a bit
Okay.
of work for them also.
Great.
And those are the main publications I'm working for right now, besides my books.
Yeah.
I did a little bit of freelance writing for some newspapers before everything shrunk so much that the written word isn't what it used to be, but a lot of it goes online. I do write online quite a bit for some websites, the On Wisconsin Outdoors website.
Okay.
That seems to be the way everything's going. But I enjoy it. I just write for writing's sake sometimes too.
Hmm.
Do it.
Sure. Any last words of wisdom?
Um,
Kind of
don't
put
buy
you on the
a fifth
spot.
wheel and take your family on the road. No, just kidding. Uh, no, all I can say is everybody makes mistakes,
Yeah.
but nobody's the same. I mean, I know that's the kind of the title of your podcast is growing to greatness, but there is
Yeah.
no one approach for anybody.
Absolutely.
All you got to do is keep your nose to the grindstone, and you can get wherever you want to get.
Hmm. Cool.
But I really appreciate you having me on here. I mean, this is kind of neat.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And
Thank
this is
you
out
for
of my
coming on
comfort
too.
zone, so this is once I got my kids to set this whole thing up, I'm set. Now I look like a professional. Now I want to do some more. Maybe I'll
Yeah.
start a podcast.
There you go. Exactly. Writing Wild podcast or something like that. There
There
you
you
go.
go.
And John has left the building or left the Zoom call. Hopefully he navigated things correctly there. So I'd like to thank John for coming on today. It was great to talk to him. Actually, you can probably tell from the video, if you're looking at the video, I'm recording this at a different time and place. So I'd just like to thank John for being on. And he was an inspiration to me in high school in terms of his athletic ability, but I think the way that he's kind of lived his dream in terms of growing his family and exploring his writing and setting the stage for the two books that he's published, it's been a real inspiration for me. And just seeing some of the details that he has in his Writing Wild book, and I'll have a link for that in this podcast, but and going into the details of his explorations of this country of ours, on a budget to say the least. But just his time with his brother Dan, just seeing the thought and the perspective that he has and just the vivid pictures that John draws, I really highly recommend getting it. And it really, kind of mirrors a little bit of what my wife and I are hoping to do with our journey is just really expose our children to something that the average kid doesn't get to see. And that's just more of this great country and getting into the day-to-day life just outside of the normal suburban lifestyle that a lot of people live in. And there's nothing wrong with that. I've got a lot of friends living in that exact environment, and it's just, and I've lived there myself for 20 years. It's just I want to explore something new. My wife and I want to see what else is out there in this world, and this is how we're choosing to do it. Maybe we're crazy, maybe we're off the rails, but we're doing this with open eyes. We're going to at least try it, and I don't want to wait till I'm 70 years old and regret not having done it. I guess is the kind of the way I want to look at it. So we are definitely using people like John as an inspiration for us taking that journey and not waiting until tomorrow to do something you could do today. So for a thought of the day, I guess that's what I would like to challenge you with, is being able to understand, that you don't have to necessarily plan out every step of the journey. You can take a shot in the dark sometimes too, but if you've got an idea that you want to pursue in life, you don't necessarily have to wait until your kids are grown or till everything's perfect, till you've got all this money saved up. If you've got something that's burning an idea into your brain or something like that, you can do it today. Maybe you just got to start small. So, take some time to down some ideas, take some time to explore those things that need to be explored, and take a shot. If there's anything else you'd like to see for topics, just let me know. I hope you enjoyed this one, and look forward to seeing you again next week.